introduction. So we have Miss Joanne Smith, who is the founding president and CEO of Girls for Gender Equity. We have Cassandra Felix. Cassandra is a first generation college student at Brooklyn College. We have Neela Katufri, born and raised in Haiti. We have Sucelia Daly, and Sucelia Daly is 21. She is a youth organizer and a fellow with Girls for Gender Equity. So please give them a warm round of applause. And so I have your bios here, but I think more importantly, what we want to know is what draws you to this work. We've seen amazing girls all day long, and we know that sometimes people are put off by our girls because they are articulate, they're bright, and they have a way of really expressing themselves. So if it would be okay, Miss Joanne, I'd like to start off with you as the founder, and I'd like to have you share with us what is it that has drawn you to this work, and to even even start this organization.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, I just want to thank y'all, Gwen's Girls, for all that you do in Pittsburgh. Last night when I learned that you passed the comprehensive sex education bill here, it's like, give it up. It's like, know that that's not just important for Pittsburgh, but New York City, because we're still trying to pass that, right? So know that nationally, the world is watching, and we need you. You're necessary. And so I just thank you. I feel very honored to be invited to your 20th. GGE just turned 20 years old this year.
Ooh, that's great.
And in starting with your question, I'm a first generation queer Haitian woman. When I was 15 years old is when I recognized, as a black girl, that I was queer. And I remember that time of feeling very isolated. I remember that time of feeling very unique, but also feeling like there was nothing wrong with me, and I needed to find spaces. At the time, I wasn't in New York anymore. I was growing up in Maryland, and that I needed to find spaces and people that felt good on my nervous system, that felt good about me being alive, because at that time, I was a recovering Catholic. I apologize to Catholics, who realized, okay, well, this doctrine does not fit then me remaining alive and in my full humanity, so I can't keep coming here, right? And my mother gave me that choice at 13. At 15, she didn't give me that choice to be in my full humanity. So it was like, when you're out of this house, you could be in your full humanity. And for me then, coming into then adulthood, and recognizing that I actually had the power to create spaces and places for black girls to come into their full humanity, it meant I had to do something, because it was about additional lifelines, intergenerational lifelines, where 15-year-olds would never have to experience that again. And not that within our organization everyone has to be queer or gender nonconforming, but that we would treat that as a norm. An expectation that we would have GSAs in schools, an expectation that, we're willing and able to accept black girls, young people of color, in their full humanity, not just as founders of organizations and not just as brilliant young people, but people who are alive and worthy then of having safe spaces. And so that's what brought me to this work and keeps me there intergenerationally now.
Thank you for sharing that. And as we move on in the discussion, I'm going to really ask that you share some concrete strategies with us about how we can continue to create those safe spaces for our girls and for our children in general. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing with us. All right, so I'm going to go to Cassandra. Can you tell us? What? As big as my mouth is, you can't hear me? All right, is that better? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to you, Miss Cassandra Felix. Tell us a little bit about how you got drawn to this work, how you became a part of this organization.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me? All right, great, perfect. Yes, so I started my journey out with GGE when I was just in the sixth grade. I participated in Urban Leaders Academy, which was an after-school program, and it was one of the best times of my life. I always say this. And through that program, like GGE was very non-traditional, right? They actually brought basketball players to come and teach us how to play basketball, and they had like this clown come teach us how to be clowns for a day. But like, I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but through like these after school programs and activities, I really had the opportunity to find and express myself. But then I also like that I was always able to show up and be true and authentic within my skin. So as I progressed throughout life, I ended up also joining SIS, which is one of our programs that we have, Sisters in Strength, for high schoolers, that allowed me to, take action, to be a part of the conversation, but also to start many conversations and to see myself being able to continue the conversations after graduating college, after graduating. So as a youth organizer for SIS, I worked on like public speaking, I was doing events. I also got to learn more about the systems and institutions that sometimes would impact me in terms of how I show up in my school as well as my peer. So the work that GGE does for me, I take it and I go out into the world. Now I'm a public health major, and I find that I find myself coming oftentimes to the conclusion in class. I'm like, wow, this is something that we were speaking at in GGE, and I'm like, I wouldn't even be able to have the conversation or have the insight that I have had it not been through years of going to events or years of having conversations with people that I've met through GGE and in the office. And now I can gladly say that I look forward to being able to not only combat public health issues through like a lens of public health, but also to have the background and experience that GGE has instilled in me to continue asking the questions, but also making sure that I'm uplifting and working within communities, making sure that everyone is, working towards this mission of being healthy. So that's how I ended up doing the work with GGE, and I still continue to do events like today because I genuinely love the work that we do. I love the mission that we have. So that's how I'm still here in GGE.
And I can see why the organization is as strong as it is. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's really great, too, that you actually grew up, you know the principles, you know the model, and now you're able to give back to other people that come through it. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, and I also always have, like, Joanne to call. Like, if I have a question or if I need, like, access or resources, I know that, like, GGE is the place that I can go to, no matter how long. If it's, like, a year they haven't heard from me, I could be like, hey, how are y'all? And I show up, right? And they show up right back for me. So it's like the energy is always matched, and I appreciate that.
Great. All right. So, am I saying this right? Nayla?
Nayla.
Beautiful name. All right. So tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to be with GGE.
So during my freshman year of high school, I was doing RAP, which is Relationship Abuse Prevention Program. So with that, I was working during the school year to facilitate in workshops, and during the summer, I was going to like Manhattan with like different other schools and different age groups to learn about social justice issues. So I was introduced to those topics at a very early age, and at first the conversations were like really uncomfortable because it's like nobody really included me in these conversations, took time to like include me, and being uncomfortable, it made me like stay because even though I'm uncomfortable, I want to learn more about it. So eventually I got to understand different issues and having passions about it. So I took that knowledge and brought it back to my school, and I started doing workshops with my school. So my coordinator, she introduced me to GGE, so I applied to it, and it's similar work. So walking into GGE, I got to build a lot of sisterhood. I participated in a lot of public speaking. I did panels. I got to learn more about myself. And I just felt loved in GGE. Like, I was welcomed with open arms. Just being a black girl, knowing that there's people that cares about you and that you're in the center and you could speak and have like people listening to your voice and what matters to you, what's bothering you, and how the older people can help you out. It felt good. Like, I was included, and I've done marches. I've spoken about Denim Day, For Denim Day, I was a speaker there. I spoke about sexual harassment and how it has affected me and my personal experience, and just being in that crowd and being involved at such a young age. It was amazing, and I'm still here today, and I thank Joanne for building GGE, because even within 20 years, I feel like Joanne is still learning new things also, because that's another thing. Being in GGE, every day there's a different opportunity for you. There's a different experience you get to learn. There's never a day you stop learning and you stop being included in things. And that made me feel special as a black girl. So, yeah.
That's great. So I love the idea about, you being willing to sit in your discomfort. You didn't leave. You were willing to sit in that, so much so that you allowed yourself to grow, and then you were able to take it back to your school as well. Right. The other thing that I like that you said is that the older people can help do some things too. So if you're an older person in here, know you have something to contribute. So thank you so much for sharing your story and what has drawn you to the work. All right, so last but not at all least, Sue, tell us a little bit about how you came to be a part of GGE. How were you drawn into this work?
So I think my story is very similar to Nayla's, in that I was pushed into it. I started when I was 16, so I was a junior, I think, at that time in high school, and I wasn't confident in that I knew what was happening. Like, there were a lot of social movements that were going on. I think namely Me Too was a big one, and I'd always been advocating for them, like, in my school or like around my school, but I wasn't confident in the fact that, like, I have experiences that deserve to be shared, and that, I have something to contribute to, like, conversations that are going on nationally. And I had a mentor for, like, she was with another program that I was doing at the time, and she was like, hey, I think you should apply for this. And I always tell this story because I hope someone hears it and can think of a time where they almost missed an opportunity, because I saw the application and I understood what was going on as far as, like, what GGE stood for. But I still had that lack of confidence, and so I almost didn't apply. I think I said it was like the last day, like maybe 6 o'clock, and like the ends at 11:59, something crazy like that. And I submitted my application, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna hear back from them, or like it's not gonna go through or whatever. And then I did get accepted, and I think that was something that kind of empowered me to say, okay, like maybe this is a space where I'll be able to be heard. And I spoke about that a lot because I'm first generation American, my parents are Jamaican, and I'm the youngest girl, the only girl, but the youngest. So it's like when I open my mouth, sometimes people don't listen, and I wasn't sure that I would have a space like that ever in life. And I'm so glad that I had, GGE there when I was so young, because it let me know that, like, no, people care. What you're saying is important. Your experiences are unique to you, but, like, they still contribute to something greater than you, and they need to be heard. So I joined YWAC, which is the Young Women's Advisory Council, and they were pushing for the expansion of Title IX, which was, a sex discrimination law in the state of New York. And I told my testimony in front of city council. I did, like, marches. I also was able to work with Nayla on an article for Essence that kind of talked about why school dress codes were discriminative, and why they should be, like, redesigned so that they're inclusive to young girls and people of color, people with bigger bodies. And those were some of the things that made me feel like my perspective made a difference, because we ended up getting it passed in 2019. So that was something that, like, again, affirmed the fact that, like, you're doing the right thing, your voice needs to be a part of this discussion. And yeah, GGE kind of, like, affirmed me. I think a lot of what Joanne was saying about making a space where young girls felt like no matter what or whatever background they had, that they could be accepted. I think she accomplished that mission times 10. And so, like, I kind of share my story to empower other young people and younger girls, like, to know that you, as shy as you may be, have something to contribute, and you can use your voice to make a difference. And it may not be where you thought, because, like, I was advocating in my school at the time, and I thought nobody would notice, but someone saw that in me and, like, pushed me towards joining GGE. And then from then, I've kind of, like, done my own thing as far as my activism, and I've grown a lot. But I think that's kind of what drew me to the work. It's like I didn't have a choice, because of my experiences as a young black girl kind of put me in a space where everything I did was political. If I wore my hair a certain way, like if I wore, a certain order of clothing, there was a statement I was making, not necessarily because I wanted to, but because people would interpret it a certain way. And so, having that be put on me from birth, but then understanding that, like, no, you can speak back, and there's community. Like, those are things that kind of drew me to not just GGE, but like the work in general, like activism as a career path, I guess.
All right, so now when Sue speaks, people listen without
right.
question. All right, which kind of leads me to the next question for you, Joanne, because we see you as the blueprint for this work. And so, how do you what is that blueprint about? How have you been able to generate and organize a space for young girls to be so articulate, to be able to, have such passion for activism?
That's a big question. I think, to be honest, it evolves, right? So from the organization I started with a fellowship, I thought it was going to be 18-month project, not even organization. And it wasn't until tragedy in the neighborhood happened I realized, no, we need to either, be serious about having a space long term or get out the way, right? We can't take this money that can go to somebody else if we're not going to do what needs to be done in addressing the root causes of gender and racial inequity, and especially the misogynoir that Black girls experience as young as 8, right, and even younger, in the womb, right? And so for me it was, okay, like it felt like a calling because of how uncomfortable I felt, how hurt I felt, how scared I felt, as well as how much I felt like I needed to learn. Because when that rape happened to an 8-year-old, which was the tragedy, it was other Black girls coming in saying things like, she was fast. She dressed like a woman, get treated like a woman. She was hard-headed anyway. And they were saying the things so they could distance themselves from her, but also so because they were repeating what they heard adults say. And we know none of that is true. None of that warrants the rape of an 8-year-old Black girl or anybody. And so for me, it was that calling that then said, let's figure it out together. And that's what it has been. That's why Nayla's able to say, Joanne's still learning, because I listen. I'm just listening. Is that how y'all think it should be done? I mean, for some folks who have been in GGE, they're like, I wish you just tell me the answer. But for most of the folks in GGE, they're like, well, let's sit and figure it out. Let's try to not be reactionary. Let's try to be proactive. But sometimes when we have to react, we have to always go to those who are most impacted by what we're reacting to. Right? We can't start with me and how it affects me if we're talking about Black girls. And so creating that space, and how do you create that space? Beyond listening, you hire the right folks. You develop an infrastructure. And I'm going to say that not only as a nonprofit leader, but as someone who has seen, we started GGE with 12 other nonprofits in New York City that focused on Black girls. We're the only ones still standing. Why? Because of infrastructure. You got to be able to pay people. You have to be able to have a space, even if it is working from home. You have to be able to have a space that could sustain what's coming and what's needed. Girls have to know that when something happens, if you say on your website you do that, you have to be able to do that, or get them to who can do that, and that requires, human resources, people, right, to make those calls and connections. So, I mean, as nonprofit leaders, I think it's extremely important that our ideas, yes, get funded, but that our infrastructure first be a priority. No matter how shiny that thing is, it feels good, you get notoriety around it, but if you can't sustain that, then you're actually causing more harm, right? Because somebody else might have been able to sustain that, and now girls don't know where to go. I think the other part of that is with the young folks who have come to my organization. I mean, I started GGE at 26, so initially it was my peers. Now it's like 20 years later, like these are young folks who are coming in from college, who are, the youth workers, and who are leading. At different iterations as a leader, you step back, you step aside. You always reassess, am I in the way or am I contributing? and how you're contributing, no matter, again, how uncomfortable it makes you feel, you step into that, because that's now your new learning curve. And so for me, that is how I have not only kept the work relevant, because the most relevant folks are the ones shaping it, but also helped to sustain my organization by doing what only I can do in the organization, right? So.
You have said so many powerful things here. One, I want to start with that calling. You know, that it's that uncomfortable feeling that makes you keep working when, you know, you're tired. And I think that there are a lot of people out here that really understand what that calling is about. Oh, excuse me, I can get so emotional. The second thing you said was about hiring the right people for this work, because everybody can't do it.
Everybody can't do it.
That's the reality of it. Everybody does not have the passion for it. Everybody does not have the drive for it. And so it is so much more than a job.
Absolutely.
It is so much more than a
yes.
job. And so, you know, you're speaking about that, but what you're also speaking about is pouring into young people and being able to give to them so that they realize their relevance. And as an older person,
Absolutely.
and more mature person, being able to step back and let them take the reins. So you've really said a lot here that is just so powerful for me, and I believe for a lot of other organizations that are standing here as well, and that are sitting with us as well. And so I want to say thank you for that, because I think that that is like the blueprint for us all. I'm going to go through it again because I think we really need to hear this, that it is just not about hiring people to do a job.
Nope.
This is not what this work is about. It's about hiring people that are passionate about this work, that care about what they're doing, and they care about these kids.
That's right.
And then being able to step back when you reach a certain role and being able to say to our young people, okay, it's your turn.
That's
and
right.
I'm going to be here to support you through it while you do it.
That's right. And I will say, you know, we were able to see TD pass the torch to Sarah, right? And I don't believe in passing torches. I would say that. I believe in lighting other torches. Okay. I do think absolutely you have to decrease so that somebody else can increase. That means step aside. But do then what only you can do, especially as somebody who has then the experience and still the passion and still the skill and still the drive. Do then what only you can do, and allow then the younger generation to do what only they can do.
Right.
So I just want to underscore that, because I think too many times also as an intergenerational organization, elders, you know, get pushed out, or elders get moved aside, and it's like, that's only when we're in the way, right? But if we're not, do what only you can do.
All right.
And that makes room for everybody.
That's great. That's great. All right, so let me throw this out to, and then I'm going to go to the audience, because I don't want to be selfish, because I could keep asking questions, but you still can't hear me. So I'm going to throw this out to the panelists, and then I'll go to the audience, because I don't want to be selfish with the questions today. I want to give you guys a chance to ask questions. But I do want to go to Nelia, Sue, and also to Cassandra. And I want to ask you, how do you support the girls that come into programming? How do you support them in a way that helps them own their space, to help them create and find their own voice? And I'll just ask each one of you to weigh in on that.
Okay, so I can go first. I recently came on in February as like the GGE fellow, so I'm helping the director of programs right now, like facilitate her. I mean, well, she was planning out the curriculum, but facilitate programs when they start. I think what I can do is, like you said, like I've kind of, not that I'm still 21, but I have a specific, because I was in programs, I have a specific perspective that can help bridge the gap, I think, between those who are leading and those who are participating. And I feel like my job now is to basically make sure that they understand that they are the priority and they are the reason why GGE exists. Like without them, we would not keep going. I believe that my job to make them safe, or how I can make them safe, is to show compassion and understand, and like show understanding to them. And pass knowledge, but also learn from them. I know that was something that I needed a space to grow. And I know everyone who was a participant with me, Nayla and I were part of the same cohort of YWAC. can see my growth, because who I was then is not who I am now. But also, giving them the space to do that, like understanding that they may make mistakes. I made mistakes, but showing that, they can be resilient, and like that they should be, they should feel safe, basically, not being perfect. And I guess it's kind of just like supporting them in that, like through that growth of like being in high school, maybe going up to college, but keeping their individuality and understanding that like the world around them is theirs and that they can shape and mold that.
Okay, so still feeling safe, creating that space so that they feel safe to make mistakes,
Yeah.
and that they can grow through them. Great. All right, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so I'm gonna go on ahead. I think like from hearing the question, the first thing that comes up to my mind is when I was in high school, a senior, Miss Nicole, she texted me. She was like, "Hey, Cassandra, like, would you like to come back and work with Urban Leaders Academy, which is where I started at GGE?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, cool." And I'm really into science. I'm really into STEM. So GGE actually gave me the opportunity to not only create my own curriculum, but then I also got the opportunity to work with students who were at my age at a point. So, and that was challenging in itself, because it's like, I'm still a student, and then I'm coming to a space with like a younger students, and I still talk to my my kids that I have from like the after school program. They have me like on social media, like they reach out to me all the time and be like, "Okay, Miss Cassandra, this is what's going on." Like, so I really had that opportunity to not only gain so much from GGE, but then to also go back to GGE in those same spaces and to bring my own aspect, like my own little identity right there, right? And to be able to do that with just, I like just working with the middle school I worked at back then, that was very good. Like, and I took that experience and I've been able to continue till today, and I still work with youth. I try to do it as much as possible, just because GGE really gave me that confidence to know that like, hey, like you're able to do this. Here are the resources that you might need, and like, I had just GGE to really go back to and fall and know that like, okay, I'll be okay. So that's like one thing I can definitely say and speak on for that.
And for many of those students, she was their first.
Yeah. So like I had what do you call it? I was doing like STEM, so like the whole entire curriculum was designed to help motivate young students to pursue careers in STEM. And what I would do is introduce them to Black sciences and just try to introduce them and really get them engaged into taking a look at those fields, because we're not represented. And if we want to have change, if we want to be able to say that like, okay, we need to have the conversations, but the people who are doing the research, the people who are doing the work, they don't look like us. So how can they really know what we go through or what we experience? So I always try to tell my students, like, pursue what it is that you want to pursue, do what makes you happy, because GGE has definitely been that place that's really instilled that into myself. Like, I can confidently say I do what makes me happy, and that's because I know through experiences that I've had in my life, like that's like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I have like my girls that I was a step coach as well, so they still talk to me all the time, and like I still have conversations with them, and I see myself as a mentor to them, because I always tell my students that, hey, I don't care how hard this is getting, if you really want to do this, do it. You have me as a resource. I know other people, so yeah.
So the power of connection that you guys have been able to build, and that sisterhood is.
Yeah. I just wanted to add really quickly, like, it is a very full circle moment for I think a lot of us here, and it's why GGE is so good at like cultivating siblinghood, because we were there, we have been there, and we can like now contribute to what their perspective or experience will be with whatever program they decide to go into, and I see that with everyone that's up on the stage. So I think that's a great part of the work, and it's a reason why we stay, because we know we have people who are mentoring us who have been in our spaces, and then we are mentoring those who will come up, Yeah.
Great. Okay, so how have you helped girls own their space?
I think this comes into play with what Joanne said earlier, with knowing the right person to hire. So there's a difference between learning from people who genuinely care and who have the patience to try to teach you even if you don't understand. And then there's a difference between, you're just getting information from somebody who's just telling you information. So thinking about how I walked into GGE and what kind of presence that I wanted around me, they were very patient, even with things that, didn't make sense to me. It took me time, and they were okay with that. They walked me through it. So just having that patience, having somebody that's willing to be on the journey with you, and knowing that later on you could be that next person to help somebody else with the same journey that you went through a few years ago, that's what kept me going. Yeah.
All right, great. So a lot of times people who work with black girls particularly will say that there are these walls up that are very difficult to kind of break down or get through, or maybe the attitudes are a little too much, and maybe their communication style is a little different. What would you say to people who say things like that, and who may be trying to start organizations that work with girls who have strong communication styles? Did everybody hear that question? Okay.
I would ask, do you love black girls? Because if you love black girls, start there.
Mm-hmm.
Start there. I think black girls and black women more than likely should have their walls up. Because this world that we're in causes so much trauma and causes so much systemic interruption and institutional violence to us because it's never built for us. And so to then have survival skills, to have a wall up, to have a mouth, to be able to fight, to guard your heart, makes more sense than to be somebody who's open and willing and happy and willing to go along, because going along didn't necessarily benefit you. You haven't seen enough evidence that that's benefited you. So show the evidence again and again and again. I think it's a harmful narrative to say black girls have their walls up or too much attitude, or they're just hard-headed. I mean, it's just such a harmful narrative, even if you feel it, to keep repeating, because we know how to live up to then what we're expected to live up to. And so, I mean, that's how we've survived as black women in society for the last hundreds of years. And so to then be able to shift the narrative and, create spaces and exposure to provide resources to trust the people and they'll trust you, it's a practice. And I'm not saying it's an easy practice. I'm not saying it's not something you have to not commit to every day, something you have to pray on, something you have to practice in reading and learning what is youth development, but it is something that you have to decide, because I love black girls, it's worth it. Because it could take one black girl that you have shown that to and created that space for, that then can change, right, the lives of so many others.
That's right.
I promise you that. And so that's what I would say. The other thing I would say, and then I'll back up, is what's going on with you? Because I think so many times, and I was one who did this too, we come to this work because we are the work. We come to this work trying to heal. And there's an identity we see, like there's a Haitian contingent up here. So it's like, are you Caribbean too? Love ya. And that's not enough, right? What I needed to heal from, I couldn't find through them. I had to do my own work. And I think it's lifelong work. It's like lifelong learning. Healing is lifelong. But we can't turn to our young people to say, okay, you're going to turn out to be what I couldn't, or you're going to heal what I wasn't able to heal by showing you can get through that. And when we're able to then see, again, young people in their full humanity at whatever youth development stage they're in, and we're able to practice that, not even perfect, I still practice that, then we are able to not only see them grow, but grow with them.
So with the question that you asked, what I think what it is, we tend to judge black girls off like rip, just seeing them without even knowing who they truly are. So the reason why black girls have their walls up and they're seen as defensive is because we're seen as ghetto, we're seen as we don't know how to talk, or we're too fast, just things that doesn't even define us. And when you're constantly surrounded by people that judge you without getting to know you, you have to be in survival mode. You have to be defensive for yourself, because if nobody's doing that for you, then who else is going to do it for you? So, of course, black girls are going to have their walls up, because if we don't get the support, we have to rely on ourselves and support our own selves.
Yeah. I also wanted to add on is that, like Joanne, you said, I think if you feel like black girls are this, that, and the third, like, you need to check yourself. Like, do some self-reflection. Even me, sometimes I go through life and it's like, I'll be like, oh my God, like, why is she acting like this? But then I'm like, hold on. Like, that's her way of expressing joy. So don't show up to the work and feel a type of way when joy doesn't look like what you expect joy to look like. So be able to be open, to be able to push yourself and challenge yourself to change how you perceive certain things, especially if you're coming into the work and you're not a part of the community, or you might not know how certain people do it. You cannot come in with high expectations, or you can't come in with this like picture perfect painting in your head. The way that we express our joy, the way that we express ourselves does not always make sense to the world, but I think that's the beauty within it itself. Not making sense to everybody. It's like, you know, so if I see a girl, she doing her thing, doing little TikToks, I'm loving it. I don't know where they're at right now, but I really appreciate being able to walk through the space and being able to feel that black girl joy, because it's like, I feel like the older we get, the more you have to start confining to certain things, because spaces are not made for us with us in mind. So allow people to express themselves how they want to express themselves. And if you have like a huge problem about it, then I'll say do a little self-reflection, get yourself right, and answer those questions for yourself.
All right.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think a lot of girls grow up thinking that they have to present a certain way. You know, we're taught how to code switch from, like, when we're basically in Pampers. You know, you can't go out and act a certain way, or else you'll have certain things attached to you that really don't have much to do with you. You're just, like you said, expressing joy in the way that you find it comfortable, but you're expected to present a certain way or act a certain way around certain groups or whatever. And I think that's something that can be challenging, you know, constantly feeling like you have to put on a mask instead of just being authentic to you. And I feel like that's something that needs to be encouraged more in our movements. Like, we need to center girls who, what you said, have stronger communication styles, is like the way you phrased it. I like that, because it is like, if you're blunt or you just say things how they are and you don't have all this political correctness or whatever the case may be, I think you still have lived experience, you still have things that are important and need to be said and need to be expressed the way that you have experienced them. And so that's something that needs to be encouraged more, actually. I feel like a lot of the times, you know, who we put on TV or who we, you know, bring up to the stage even, usually aren't, like, they have a lot of, and that's another reason why I felt like I wasn't represented, because I was so young and I didn't have any, you know, like, I don't have any doctorates or any, like, higher education. So, like, who would listen to me? Who would listen to what I have to say? Why would what I've been through matter? And when we don't represent that, that's when our movements die, because a lot of young women need to feel like they are contributing in some way just by being themselves, instead of having to, you know, dress it up or whatever the case may be. And yeah, I was born in Brooklyn. I know y'all can't tell my accent a little bit, or maybe you can, I don't know. But that's something I try to, you know, bring into whenever I'm on stage or whenever I'm speaking. I try to make it be known that, you know, I am someone who grew up in, you know, Queens and was born in Brooklyn, and I have that about me, and that's contributing to who I am and what my experiences are. And it's an important part. And, you know, the way that I speak or how I present myself, those are things that are extra, but the essence of who I am is what needs to be put foremost, and I think that's something that we should try to include more. Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you so much. I do want to take a minute. This is a rich conversation. I could keep diving in and asking additional questions, but I want to throw it out to our audience, and I want to ask you, do you have any questions for our panel that you would like to ask? What's resonated with you so far in reference to what they've said? sorry.
Thank you for coming to Pittsburgh. My name is Sister Aisha. Thank you for coming to Pittsburgh. My name is Sister Aisha, and I have a question for you. In our city, we didn't really see a large population of young sisters and families from other parts of the world. So for a really long time, it was just mostly black people and white people, maybe people of European descent, but not many from the African diaspora. And so in my work, I started to advocate for continental Africans like myself to be included in equity discourse, critical discourse about girls. And I'm just wondering, do you women get sisters from the global diaspora? And what advice do you have for a city like this that just is about that binary still? We still are trying to push, or at least I am, I don't know about y'all, but still trying to push for something a little more expansive. What advice would you have, being that your metropolis is so large and full of young sisters from all over the world?
I would say that they exist. There are people who have different or ethnic backgrounds, and like you said, Pittsburgh may be very binary. The difference is mostly that the city, the people who were from, I think I'm thinking of where Rose was from specifically. But we have people from Gambia, people from Guinea, Mali. Like, there's Caribbean people. There's people who are just American or from the diaspora in that way, and the similarities between us. I mean, I think we had a Christmas party one year. Might be a little bit off kilter, but we did I guess, I wouldn't call it a potluck because we did cater, but we had foods from different regions, and then that exposed me to things that I actually hadn't tried. I didn't have jollof until that day, until that Christmas party. So I think there are definitely going to be girls in the city, or people who might feel invisible because there isn't a strong presence of a certain community. And I really don't have tips on how to outreach to them. I think maybe like the internet, like Facebook groups or something like that. Like, there might be certain schools that have like clubs, if you're looking for younger girls that are like maybe like a Caribbean club or something like that, or a African club or something of that nature that would, like, you could maybe go to and ask if they would want to join, because I think that there are definitely people here who probably just don't even know that the work that you're doing is existing. Yeah, I think that's probably
Once girls did, they opened their doors up to my students.
Is that
Yeah.
you, Sister I? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You
That's
actually
amazing.
have that in the school right now, right?
Yeah.
You support the African people that are in the school. So, right, she's already doing a lot of that work. Thank you for that question, because that was a great question.
Thank you.
Of course, I went over the time, so I apologize. So we want to thank our panel for actually being here with us. You shared great information, and I apologize that I had so many questions about your program and what you've done. We want to open up our breakout sessions, but we do have something for you, so we wanted to say thank you.
Thank you
Please
so
give
much.
them another round of applause.